All right, good morning. We are going to go ahead and finish Gooney Bird Greene today. All right, we just finished hearing the story about how Catman was consumed by the cow. All right. I love happy endings, Kiko said with a sigh. Me too, Mrs. Pigeon said. Thank you, Gooney Bird. Let's get out our arithmetic books now, class. Everyone in the class groaned. I know, Mrs. Pigeon said, laughing. It's much more fun to listen to Gooney Bird's stories, but we can look forward to tomorrow. She'll have another one tomorrow. Gooney Bird had gone back to her desk and taken out her arithmetic book. She looked up in surprise. No, actually, I won't, she said. That was my last story. The second graders, almost every one of them called no in very loud, sad voices. It sounded like a huge chorus singing a song called No. Mrs. Pigeon looked horrified. But Gooney Bird, she said, we still have a lot of unanswered questions. Like what? Asked Gooney Bird. Well, let me think, Mrs. Pigeon frowned. The false teeth, Nicholas called. Yes, Mrs. Pigeon said. Why did your father have to pack 43 sets of false teeth? That's a story you haven't told yet. Gooney Bird looked surprised. That's not a story, she said. That simply requires a dictionary. You have one right there on your desk, Mrs. Pigeon. Mrs. Pigeon reached for her dictionary. Look up this word, Gooney Bird said. She pronounced the word very carefully. Prosthodontist. My goodness, Mrs. Pigeon read the definition. It's a special kind of dentist. He makes false teeth. Exactly, Gooney Bird said. That's what my father is. No story there. But we want more stories, Gooney Bird, Barry Tuckerman said in a loud voice. As usual, he was standing up with one knee on his desk chair. Gooney Bird sighed impatiently. I need to do my arithmetic, she said. I'm not very good at subtraction yet, but all right, sit down, Barry. Close the dictionary, Mrs. Pigeon. I will tell you how to get stories. Oh, I'm very excited. Chapter 7. Gooney Bird looked around the classroom. She slid the strap of her cowhide purse from her shoulders and set the purse on the floor below the terranium table. With her face scrunched into a quiet, thinking expression, she unbuttoned her orange fur jacket and hung it on the back of the chair by her desk. Then she returned to the front of the room and faced the class. She was wearing a blue plaid skirt, a white blouse, black tights, and brown lace-up shoes. There were bright blue hair ribbons in her neatly brushed red hair. She looked ordinary. She looked dignified. She looked wise. Let's check her out. She looks good. Out there, invisible, are a lot of stories not yet told, Gooney Bird told the class. Absolutely true ones? Beanie asked in a small voice. Yes, absolutely true ones. What are they? Asked Beanie. Do you remember that my first story was called How Gooney Bird Got Her Name? Gooney Bird asked. Yes, Beanie replied. Well, another is called How Beanie Got Her Name. Before I was born, Beanie said, laughing, there was a thing called an ultrasound that showed me curled up inside my mom, and I looked just like a bean. My mom said lima bean, and my daddy said no, jelly bean. And so that's a fine story beginning, Gooney Bird said, an absolutely true one. You should tell that one on Friday, Beanie. What other invisible stories are out there? Mrs. Pigeon asked. Do you remember that my second story was about how I came from China on a flying carpet? Oh my, yes, Mrs. Pigeon said. I had to look up China in the atlas. Out there, invisible and waiting, Gooney Bird said, is a story called, let me think. She closed her eyes. Is that the title? Let me think? Malcolm asked. No, Gooney Bird opened her eyes. The story is called How Kiko's Family Came to Water Tower. Kiko smiled. Well, they started out on a ship, she said. First, my grandmother and grandfather got on a big ship in Yokohama and went to Honolulu. They were a little scared because they had never been to America before. Mrs. Pigeon, you should get the atlas out. Mrs. Pigeon smiled. I will when you tell your story, Kiko. Maybe next Wednesday? Okay, Kiko said, and I'll bring some pictures. And how about if I wear a kimono? That wouldn't be distracting like whiskers, would it? It would be lovely, Gooney Bird said. And I could maybe carry a fan and a parasol? Gooney Bird said gently. That would be a little like whiskers, Kiko. Overdoing it? Kiko asked. Overdoing it, Gooney Bird said. What about me? Asked Barry. Do I have a story? Of course you do, Gooney Bird told him. You have stories called How Barry Got His Name, and How Barry's Family Came to Water Tower, and lots of others. Barry grinned. Which one should I tell? He asked. Do you remember that my third story was about my diamond earrings? Barry nodded. My suggestion is that when it's your turn, Barry, you should tell an absolutely true story called When Barry Spent Every Penny He Had on Something He Wanted Really Badly. Ooh, that I think we've all done that before, huh? The class waited and watched Barry Tuckerman as he squinched his face up thinking. Then he grinned. Okay, he said, I'll tell it, but it's really, really gross. Oh no, said Kiko, I hate gross. You can cover your ears for Barry's story, Gooney Bird told her. Wear earmuffs that day. Green ones would go nicely with your red sweater, I think. Who else? What else? The class called. My fourth story was called How Gooney Bird Directed an Orchestra. Mrs. Pigeon suggested, maybe we could skip that one, Gooney Bird. I know no one in the class has ever led an orchestra. Class, Gooney Bird asked, has anyone here ever been late to school because something quite unusual happened? Almost every hand went up. Well, and I bet some of my students as well, huh? Malcolm, Gooney Bird said, maybe that story could be your assignment. It could be called Why Malcolm Was Late to School. It could be about the time I was asleep under my bed and my mother couldn't find me in the morning, Malcolm said. Or the time that I dropped my toothbrush in the toilet. And when I tried to get it back, oh no, Kiko cried and covered her ears. Don't tell it now and give it away, Malcolm, Gooney Bird said. You work on your story and make it very suspenseful by adding a suddenly in the middle. Gooney Bird looked around the classroom. All the second graders had taken out paper and pencils. They were all writing down ideas for their stories. And remember my last story about Catman, she reminded them. Has anyone here ever lost a beloved pet? Oh my gosh, I have a story for that one. Almost every hand went up again, even Mrs. Pigeon's. Could that be my story, Gooney Bird? Mrs. Pigeon said. I had a parakeet named Brucey, and somehow the door to his cage was left open. And next Tuesday, Gooney Bird said, how I lost Brucey. And found him again, Mrs. Pigeon said with a happy smile. My story has a surprise ending. Mine will be how I lost Gretchen Guinea Pig, Tricia said. Mine has a sad ending. You know what, Mrs. Pigeon said, standing up? It's lunchtime already. Let's skip arithmetic today, class. The students put the arithmetic books back in their desks. They reached for lunch boxes instead. Gooney Bird took out a grapefruit, a cucumber, and some dill pickles. I'm having a completely vegetarian day today, she explained. But look at this, dessert for the whole class. She held up a bulky paper bag. What is it? The children asked. Gooney Bird grinned. 63 gumballs, she said. And after I give them out, I'm going to teach you all a wonderful whirling dance called the tarantella. Suddenly, Felicia Ann looked up from the floor. Shouldn't we all hug and kiss first, she said in a surprisingly loud voice. Thank you for suggesting that, Felicia Ann, Gooney Bird replied. Of course we should. And so they did. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our story. And I hope you kept in mind what makes somebody good at something. And we know Gooney Bird was a really good storyteller, and I hope she has inspired you to do some writing of your own. And it can be about just your everyday life. Let me tell you a little bit about our author, Lois Lowry. Lois Lowry has written many books beloved by children and adults alike, from the popular Anastasia Krupnik series to her best-selling novel, The Giver. Her books have garnered countless honors and awards, including 2 Newbery Medals. She and the illustrator Mitty Thomas have been friends for years and enjoy working on the Gooney Bird books together. Lois Lowry divides her time between Massachusetts and Maine. Mitty Thomas lives in Maine. They share custody of a carved wooden rooster. And if you want to learn more about Gooney Bird books or find some more to read on your own, you can go to www.gooneybirdgreene with an E at the end, books.com. All right, scholars, I hope you enjoyed that read aloud and enjoy your lunch.